Hey, Corky here. I had to come in, get out from the mowers outside, and come to the chair. This is my chair. It's not a rocker. But anyway, talking about formal preparation for ministry, I noticed on my YouTube channel that I'm getting more likes for the ministry talks than I was for the guitar lessons, and so that's reasonable. Um, So give the people what they want. That's what I say. That's what Jack's Burger says. That's what I say. Um, I'm going to title this particular one, How I Made A's Under Hollis Galls. And those of you who come to the Church of God tradition or Lee University tradition or so forth, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. I was, a high school dropout, got my GED, never let it go to my head. Started taking Bible classes at night, one at a time, John Wesley College in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then later High Point, North Carolina. And so John Wesley's been a hero, down through the years. Taking a class at a time, knowing what I was going to need to have a bachelor's degree in biblical studies or theology, whatever you want to say, to start getting those courses. So got, Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, Hebrews general epistles, Daniel Revelation, and then, got my parliamentary procedure. These are the courses I started out going at nights to get while I'm working a full-time job in a welding shop. So there's no shortcut to the suffering that you got to go through in life just to get where you're hoping to go. So anyway, I had an opportunity to get a dorm supervisor's job in 1983 at Lee College, now Lee University. And I highly recommend for any student that plans to do on-campus education to consider being a dorm supervisor, because those jobs are very, very effective. You live in an apartment in a dorm, especially if you're an older student, and you do room checks and you do discipline. You have prayer meetings and programs, usually every quarter or ever so often. You put on programs in the dorm for students. And then you have the RAs, resident assistants, that are under you. And I did that, put myself through college that way. I'm really grateful that I did that. It was a good experience because I was like a pastor of, 158 men, in that building. And so there's a load of stories on that I won't get into now. But so I got to go to Lee University, moved to Tennessee with my wife and daughter. And there I started taking classes, getting my zoology class, my English composition class. Would to God that a lot of students now that we've had to grade their papers wish they'd taken 3 English comp classes, because they don't understand writing and reading. It's really a horrible time right now looking at the papers. I taught in Oklahoma before I moved here to Alabama a year ago, and I was teaching in Oklahoma, and it's just really amazing. Then you've got the whole problem of it's not a problem, but you've got language barriers with internationals and all that you have to be able to overcome. And then you try and do all this on the computer, because even if you have a campus class now, you got an online site that you have to go to and do things during the week and all. It's very common. But consequently, what they've done is they've made the professors part-time instead of full-time. They don't get benefits. So being a professor or an instructor these days is very difficult, even though the online makes it available for a lot of students. Like one class I taught, college class I taught online, I had young people right here in the same town with me But then I would have soldiers in Afghanistan also in my class. So when the local students would complain that their grandma was sick and they couldn't take the test, I always said, "Well, I got a guy in a foxhole in Afghanistan." If they made foxholes in Afghanistan, I certainly would want to have been in one of those. But at any rate, I got to go to college and was a dorm supervisor and started taking these courses. And then you always have these difficult professors. Well, the most difficult one wasn't because he was so academically, up there, but the guy I took Greek from, he was he was a jerk, and so he cleaned the class out. Started with about 30, ended up with about 10, something like that. I put my fist through a door over that class, but I did finish the class, and so had 2 years of Greek, New Testament Greek. We don't take that class to be able to get up in the pulpit and quote Greek words. We take Greek so we can understand the original meaning of Scripture, and then we get up in the vernacular and we tell it. But we discovered it by interpreting, translating the original manuscripts, okay? So I had this other guy was real hard. His name was Dr. Hollis Gauls. He would go on to be a dear friend in our family, and but early on he was one of the toughest I'd come up against, and I made an F on my first class. I moved my family to Tennessee to further my education and become a more effective minister. And the first Bible class I take, I get an F on because I didn't have my name at the right place on my title page, things like that. So there were those guys, and I had to retake that and get past him. But then Hollis Gauls, I was really interested in what he had to say, I couldn't figure him out. So I found out that I could go to the library and pull one of the recent college catalogs of my college. And if you look in the faculty section, I don't think they do this anymore, but I could see what schools he attended. And so I looked up Hollis Gauls in the college catalog. Is at the old Lee Library. It's not even there anymore. Something else. And so I looked at him, and he had a bachelor's from, I think, Presbyterian College. He had a master's from Columbia Seminary in Atlanta, and then he had a doctorate from Emory University in Atlanta, Candler Theological Seminary, which is the theological seminary section of Emory. And when I saw that, I said, okay, Presbyterian. He went to Presbyterian College. Then he went to Columbia Seminary, which I knew had quite a number of Presbyterians teaching there at different times. And then he attended Emory, which I knew, though it was known to be Methodist school, a lot of Presbyterians went there. So I started digging through the official teachings of the Presbyterian Church, and I found the outline to our course, which he had never given us. What I discovered at this point is in the United States, unlike England, the United States education is an obstacle course because they don't want to give out too many doctorates, and they want to make it difficult for you. In England, they make it available to everybody, the open universities, quite a different approach to education. So I prayed over this college catalog, literally on my knees praying over it, and saw Presbyterian, and possible Presbyterian. So I went and pulled the Presbyterian doctrine books off the shelf and found the outline to my systematic theology course. God is infinite, eternal, unending, in all of his wisdom, So he had these three infinite, eternal, and unending, and then that branched off into the other attributes of God. When I realized this, it gave me the key to the course. As soon as my classmates began to find out that I had made that discovery, that he's really teaching us, and when we looked at our textbook, it was indeed a Presbyterian textbook. Now, Dr. Gause, in years to come, would become a much more constructive theologian as a Pentecostal, and he would not continue to just move in like Presbyterian ways, but he switched and was more in a Wesleyan Pentecostal way, so that his later works reflected, a very thoughtful, more thoughtful, constructive theology that was true to him rather than the Presbyterian thing. And so I know nowadays that a lot of this is irrelevant to young people who are in in ministry and everything. You're not thinking about denominations. You're going to be going to a network. You're going to be in an independent church or something like that. I know denominations are on the way out. But at my time, this was the way that I overcame some of the barriers. And so you have to learn to read what school it is you're going to. Like, I'm not trying to be ugly here, but those of you who choose Liberty in Lynchburg, Virginia, as your school, you need to know that in 1977, when I looked toward applying there, they said that they would forbid speaking in tongues on campus. And the reason they did is because they were a cessationist Baptistic school. It was not a school that supported full gospel beliefs. And so probably you need to know now, if you do your research, that that's still what Liberty is. Now, if you can get through that and you don't mind having that degree, that's your business. But for me, I wanted to go somewhere that championed the beliefs and convictions that I had. And so I wasn't going to fight my professors all the time. I was wanting to sit under people that talked about wonderful things that I loved, okay? That's just one of the ways that I survived 39 years total of academic study. So that's some more ideas on formal training. I'll come back and do a little bit more on this. Trying to keep these as brief as possible. Thank you.